All right, so we're going to get started going here. This is Digital Tools for Architects, Rhino and V-Ray for the spring of 2018. Welcome back from break, those of you that I've had before. This is kind of one of those interesting ones because 136 has such a large number of people that have already had me. There'll be a lot of references to this is different from 135, or this is, you know, and for those of you that haven't ever had me before, sorry. It just is the way it is. Sometimes it's easiest to contrast for those people that have had me before. So this is 136. You don't need to take 135 before you take 136. You can take them out of order. It doesn't make any difference. But you're here. You're in 136, which is awesome because 136 is awesome, right? I sound like one of those Lego movies. My son, who's 3.5, is obsessed with the Lego movies. Awesome this, and I'm awesome. And anyway, sorry. It is what it is. So, a little bit about me before we get started. Obviously, I have a son. No, that was not what I was going to talk about. My name is Grant Adams. I'm an associate professor of architecture here at DVC. That basically translates to I'm a part-time faculty member. I'm here 2 days a week to teach you guys and my 135 class in the morning, many of which I've already seen you guys in that one. And so I have another job. I have a whole other life outside of this, but I come 2 days to teach you because I like it. I've been teaching here at DVC for 10 years, which is amazing in and of itself. But obviously that shows that I do like these classes and I do like to teach them. My email is gadams@dvc.edu. That's my official school email. You can email me on that. I also have grant@digitaltoolsforarchitects.com. If you send me an email to my DVC email, chances are I'll reply to it from the Digital Tools for Architects email. Doesn't really matter. And both will get to me. Here's my phone number. If you want to text me or call me, that's fine. If you call me, I may or may not answer. Probably won't answer, but it's there, right? But you can text me, and a lot of people find that useful. If you're running late or something like that, please text me and tell me you're running late and let me know that you're not going to be here or whatever, or if you're absent, etc. I'll emphasize that a little bit later on. I have 2 office hours scheduled every week. The first one is from 7 to 8 a.m., which is before my morning class on Monday mornings. I also have, more convenient for you guys, in the afternoon class on Wednesdays from 2 to 3 p.m. I'll be here, and you can ask me questions. Though the truth is, I'm here in the morning, every morning anyway, and I tend to linger and I tend to wander around, and you can ask me questions whenever you want, because you all do anyway, so why not? These are my official office hours, however. And so they're there. If you need to meet with me outside of those hours and you want to set up something special, we can do that too. I'm here for you. I want you guys to become better students. I want you to become better designers. I want you to learn all this stuff. Therefore, I want to be available for you guys to learn as much as you possibly can. So a couple other things that I want to point out before we move on from this slide. In terms of my background, just so you know where I'm coming from, I did my undergraduate at UC Berkeley. So I have a Bachelor of Arts in Architecture, which is the 4-year unaccredited degree for those of you that are thinking about transferring and all that kind of stuff. It's the 4-year unaccredited degree. I then took a year off and went back to Berkeley, which is rather rare, to get my master's degree. So I have the 2-year option 2 MArch, or the Master of Architecture degree, again from UC Berkeley. So I spent a lot of time there, though it's been 10 years since I was a student, so my knowledge is a little out of date, and a lot of faculty has turned over. There's still a few people that I know very well that teach, but that gives you a little sense of my background. When I was a grad student, I did a lot of teaching, student teaching while I was there, and I really, really liked teaching. So because of that, at the end of grad school, when everybody sits there and says, well, wait a minute, now that I'm done with school, what do I do now? I had the great idea that I would come here and teach. So I applied to teach here, and I was hired to teach the 135 class, which is the first one. And about, I'd say 2 years into teaching, I convinced Daniel that we really should teach Rhino, because that was the software. And he was like, Rhino what? And now if you go over there and you say, Daniel, Rhino, he'd still say, Rhino what? No, I'm kidding. But the truth is that when I was in grad school, Rhino was kind of an up-and-coming thing. We used Rhino 1 and Rhino 2. We're now on Rhino 5, so it was a ways back. Some of the things that we can do now are a lot nicer than they were then, but it was still kind of the up-and-coming thing. Like, we really wanted to do it. Anyway, so I convinced him that we really needed to have Rhino. Question?
You later compared with Velvet?
I didn't know Velvet.
Oh, it's Autodesk.
I didn't know it. Is it an Autodesk product?
Yeah.
No, I don't know. I don't know it. But anyway.
They even have a class here.
Oh, Revit.
Oh, sorry.
Yes. No, it's different than Revit. Rhino is a much more free-form design tool, and you guys will see. Anyway, so when I was in grad school, we were using it. V-Ray didn't exist, by the way, at that point. And so I convinced Daniel that we really need to teach this class. And once I got him convinced that this was a good idea, it kind of developed a course of its own. And of course, now here we are way down the road teaching Rhino, and you guys are all going to learn it. And Berkeley and or Cal Poly are both looking for you to have good knowledge in both Rhino and V-Ray. So moving on, what are we going to do here in this class? There's a website for this class. Those of you that have been in 135, you're going to use the same accounts. Everything's going to be the same. Super easy for you. Those of you that have never taken a class with me, we're going to get you registered today and get you up to speed on the website. The website is digitaltoolsforarchitects.com. It is not Canvas or Insight or anything related to school. It's outside of that. It's in its own realm. I pay for the server to host all your stuff. So it's just separate. Anyway, we're going to go to the website for all of your exercises, for all of your assignments. You will ultimately be turning in most of your coursework in this class on the course website. The syllabus is there, so all of you will walk out the door and toss your syllabus, and then someday you might need some reference piece of information relating to the syllabus, in which case you can go back and find it. It's there. There's a calendar that'll have information about what I'm talking about on any given day, when the assignments are due, all that kind of stuff. You're going to post your exercises and assignments whenever they're due. You're also going to view any tutorials, helpful hints, all that kind of stuff on the course website. I'll go through and show you that. One of the things about Rhino and V-Ray, especially when we get into V-Ray, is there's lots of little tiny tricky options that are available. And sometimes you just need to go back and reference, wait, what options did he say? And so I always write out everything that we're doing, just in case you need to go back and double check those certain options. And I'll, of course, walk through it and give you the live demonstrations of it as well. You will also, have to comment on student work, right? Which you'll do on the course website. It's not quite as many comments as the 135. It's maybe 50-ish, 50 to 60, as opposed to 80 to 90. So you get a little bit of a reprieve in here. The reason that you get a reprieve is in the very beginning, there's a lot of things that we all do the same thing. We all build the same thing because I'm trying to teach you certain skills. So you have to, you guys all have to learn how to use the project tool. So everybody's going to do the same thing, so you all learn how to use the project tool, for example. So there's going to be a lot of those kinds of things in the beginning. At a certain point in the semester, it's about a month and a half, 2 months in, you guys will start getting a lot more freedom, and you'll be doing your own things. And when you do your own things, the comments become far more critical. We'll talk a little bit more about those in just a second. And so interspersed with all the stuff that I'm talking about, I have to throw some images in just for the fun of it about Rhino and V-Ray. So the course schedule, you guys are all here, so you're at least aware of the schedule. Essentially, the lecture portion of the class is the first hour, so from 11 to 11:50. It's not always a precise science. Generally, it's about that long for me to talk. This class will have far fewer formal lectures where I'm standing up here talking about concepts to you, and lots more time actually demonstrating this is how you make this, or this is how you do that in Rhino. It's software intensive, therefore we're going to spend a lot of time in Rhino actually working. And you'll get your first taste of that today because we'll build something in Rhino today. So then we move on to the lab period, which is from 12 to 1:50. So you get 2 hours afterward to work on your lab exercise for whatever it is in a given day, in which case you'll do it. And then obviously we talked about my office hours. My office, by the way, is right across the hallway there. It's 104B, though I could be in here just as easily as I could be in there. It doesn't really matter. You can find me in either place. So the other thing about this is you guys all recognize that this class falls between 11 and 2. What other critical thing falls between 11 and 2 every day? Lunch, right? Really nice of the scheduling people to schedule this for us, okay? So I am not expecting you guys to just starve. Okay, it's unrealistic. You guys need food, etc. Though, by the way, I tend to starve because I don't actually take the break. But you guys will get a break. So generally what I ask that you try to do is to figure out when it works for you. I will usually have a break between the lecture and the lab portion. So I'll do a bunch of demo, and we'll talk about things, and then we'll take a break, and then we'll get back into the lab portion. Because the lab portion a lot of the time is self-directed, you're kind of doing your own thing, it doesn't matter that you all start at exactly the same time. So if you need to take your break there, go eat your lunch. Please don't actually eat your lunch in the room, go outside. If you have coffee and that kind of stuff, you can bring that in. I don't mind as long as it has a lid on it. But when you go eat, just sit outside and get a little fresh air. That's not bad for you either. And have your lunch, take your little break. Okay? It's a college class. You don't need to ask me. Just do it. Okay? It's just the way it is. And it's one of the side effects of having the class in this time slot. So I recognize that that happens, and it is what it is. You can read the course description. Basically, it says, guess what? We're going to do Rhino and V-Ray and a bunch of other stuff. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. So here we go. We're going to be using Rhino 5, which is the current Rhino version, which is made by a company called McNeil. Independent. It's like the last main independent software maker that's not owned by Autodesk. So I know, shocking, right? And you know, the truth is, thankfully, they're not owned by Autodesk because they made a really great product that I think AutoCAD would have, or Autodesk would have crippled because they would have tried to wrap it into Revit or some other program. So the fact that it's independent is great, gives us a lot of flexibility. It's available if you're interested in it. You can go to rhino3d.com and you can see information about it. Rhino does have a student trial. If I'm not mistaken, it's a 90-day student trial. So if you want to download it and run it on your home computer, awesome. However, think about when the last day of the semester is, when you'd probably be wanting to use it, and then back yourself up 90 days and start your trial so that you can end the semester with it. Make sense? You don't need it yet. You can do everything that we're going to do in the first couple weeks in lab on the computers. So there won't even be an assignment for a while. So you can work on that kind of stuff. Yeah?
Do they offer like a student discount?
Right. So there also is a student discount. I forget what the discount is. It's pretty cheap. It might be $50. It might be $100. But relatively speaking, it's pretty cheap. So you can actually get a student version. There are probably other versions that are floating around that I can't advise you anything on. But if you talk to your friends and whatever, there may be other versions of it floating around. But again, I have no comment on any of that stuff. V-Ray is the other big piece of software that we're going to tackle in this class. So unlike 135, for those of you that were in 135 where we covered a lot of different stuff, in this particular course, we're really only dealing with Rhino and V-Ray. That's it. V-Ray is a plugin for Rhino. It's made by another company called the Chaos Group. Their name is very appropriate because if you try to find any information about anything relating to V-Ray, it's chaos. It's very complicated, and it's hard to get anything. That being said, don't bother trying to install V-Ray or buying a student version of V-Ray or anything on your home computer. It's not worth it. Right? Do your Rhino modeling on your computer. That's great. Go home and do all that stuff. Come in here and do your V-Ray in here. We have a network render set up so you can actually borrow computing power from other renderers that are other computers that aren't being used, that are sitting idle in the lab. It will make all your rendering significantly faster. It's just not worth it. So the licensing is really complicated for V-Ray. Just trust me on this one. Okay? So deal with V-Ray here. Deal with Rhino at home if you want to. Anyway, it's a great piece of software. It is incredibly photorealistic, the types of renderings and lighting conditions that we can create in V-Ray. That makes it awesome. Furthermore, with V-Ray, we have the ability, once you learn V-Ray, they make a V-Ray plugin for SketchUp. They make a V-Ray plugin for 3D Studio. They make V-Ray plugins for a lot of different software. So if you learn V-Ray and you end up down the road switching to a different program, or you really decide that you like SketchUp better for some reason that I can't fathom, then you could theoretically use V-Ray for SketchUp and get the same great quality renderings out. So just because you're learning it for Rhino right now doesn't mean that it can't act as an independent rendering engine down the road. So the other things is we are going to do some physical 3D modeling in this class. So not everything is just going to be computers and rendering. We'll actually have to build stuff. One of your assignments, we will go and laser cut topography, and I'll teach you how to assemble it and work with it. So it's getting from the digital world out into a physical model. You'll have to learn that process. Furthermore, this will be the first semester that it will be required that you do a 3D print as part of the class. So I'll teach you how to do the 3D print, and then you'll schedule time in the lab, and we'll actually do a 3D print. So you get that experience as well. I will add one caveat, and that is that the 3D printers have to be working for me to be able to teach you to do the 3D print. So conceptually, you will be doing 3D printing. But I can't promise that in 2 months the 3D printers won't be broken. But they should be working by that point, okay? Or maybe they are working right now, or they haven't gone. Anyway, it is what it is. The idea, though, is that you will learn to 3D print as well in this class. And certainly you will learn the skills necessary to create a file from Rhino that can actually be 3D printed. And that's really, really important. So there is a textbook, a handbook for the class. If you already bought it in 135, you don't have to buy it again. It's the same handbook, and it'll work just fine. This has all the tutorials and stuff written out. It's particularly useful in this class because it has all the V-Ray stuff written out, just in case you got lost or you lost a setting or something like that. It is in there. I recommend that you use it to take notes as you go along, because if you write, oh, these settings worked really well, then when you go to do it in 2 years, and you can go back and look, and you know where to search for it. No reason not to search for a coupon code. If you can get free shipping or a discount on it, by all means, do it. It's not available in the bookstore. You have to order it online because it's an online publisher. They publish on demand. You want the book, they print it for you and send it to you. Okay? But like I said, if you already bought it, great. I'm saving you money because you don't have to buy the same thing twice. Okay, so the all-important grading part of the class. This should look really familiar if you took 135. It's basically the same setup. And that is, your lab exercises are worth 20%. Your assignments collectively are worth 40%. The big difference here is that you will probably only have 4 assignments for this class versus in 136, or excuse me, in 135 you had like 6. So a little bit longer assignments. There's going to be a long time before your first assignment because there's a lot of skill building that you have to do just to be ready to do your assignment. So it's a bit of a lead up time before you get that. That's worth collectively 40% of your grade. We'll have a final project, so it's not a final exam. You won't have a test on how fast you can do something in Rhino. You will have a final project that will involve renderings, both daytime and nighttime renderings, so you'll have lighting and all that kind of fun stuff. And you'll have to do plans and elevations and sections and that sort of thing. So I'll talk you through how you do all of that, and that collectively will be worth 30% of your overall grade, which can certainly bring you up or drop you down as appropriate. Participation's worth 10% of your grade. We'll talk a little bit more in depth about how you make sure you get that 10%. The other thing, and those of you that were in 135 should be able to attest to this, at least I hope that I set it up correctly. This is very similar to 135, where you have a very consistent workflow. You shouldn't feel overwhelmed in this class. You should just be here plugging away. If you get behind, or if you don't do your work on time, or you're not here in class, you'll get behind and you will feel overwhelmed. So be here, do your work, life is good. How many people are in 220 right now? Okay, so that was my guess. Okay, it's kind of like in 135 when I asked how many people are in 121, and 90% of you raised your hand. So that's fine. This is a great class to go with your 220. There's no reason you can't take both of them at the same time. I recognize that you're in 220. I recognize that you have a lot of work to do outside. So I try my hardest to get most of the work done in here, which is much like 135 was. And I think you guys would agree. Okay, so same kind of deal. So your lab exercises, and I apologize for those of you in 135, this is like completely repeat of what you learned last time, but it is what it is. I have to go over it anyway. They're worth 20% of your overall grade. The exercises are designed to be completed in lab during the lab period. So you start your lab at noon-ish, and you should be done by 1:50. Even if you're not quite done with everything, post something. Okay? That still gets you credit for it. These are designed for you to be able to experiment and play around with ideas and decide, oh, this works or this doesn't really work. And if it works, that's great. And if it doesn't work, it's still OK. You still get credit. I grade them on a pass, not pass system. So you do it, you get credit for it. You don't do it, you don't get credit for it. It's really easy. Okay? And it also gives you that freedom to play around with ideas and to try stuff. And if it doesn't really work out or it fails or it doesn't look right, that's okay. You're learning. And that's the point. So you do it, you get credit. That's the really critical idea. Collectively, they're worth 20% of your overall grade. You do all of them, guess what? That really boosts your grade. That's a good thing. Assignments are typically larger and require some work outside of class. So you have a question about the last slide?
Yeah.
All right.
I read in the syllabus that you lose points if the exercise is late by a couple of days, so it's not like 135 where you can turn in everything.
No, I don't. Yes, technically I have the late thing and I could enforce it. I choose not to enforce it on the exercises. So even though it says in the syllabus that I'll lose, the truth is it's way too much work for me to keep track of when you turned it in and how on time it was and whatever. So I don't. So it's pass, not pass. I won't mark you late. You either get 100% or you don't. Even if it's a little, I'm not overly worried as long as you do it. Okay, that's the key. Just do it. Okay, and those of you that were in 135, you know that along the way you end up with these holes, like you did something and you forgot to do it, and you forgot to post it or whatever. It's okay. You just post it anyway, and you'll be fine. Okay. So anyway, we'll go over it. If you have questions, we can deal with it as we go forward. Assignments are larger, like I said, typically require some work outside of class. They're graded based on the skills you use and the overall design. The skills you lose, yeah, that is a great class. And the overall design. So for example, in this class, the first assignment will be a furniture design assignment. You'll be doing a table and a chair. You'll be graded on how did you do? Were you able to create a table and a chair? Were you able to apply a material on that table and chair? Were you able to make the material look realistic? Was it texture? It's called texture mapping. Were you able to map the texture on the table and chair correctly? Does it look like it's the right scale and all that? But also, how good is the design of your chair? So if it's a really simple, basic chair, you can still do okay, but it's not quite as good as somebody who really pushed the boundaries a little bit. So it is a bit of a design class. It's technical skills coupled with design, and it's important for you guys to know that. Their assignments collectively will be worth 40% of your overall grade. If there's 4 assignments, that means each one is worth 10% of your overall grade. You get a sense for how they work and how they're weighted. Just like in 135, if you don't do well on a particular assignment, you can go back and do a resubmit. You can do one for each assignment. So you can do each one over, but you can only do each one over one time. So same rules apply in this. The regrades don't happen until the very end of the semester. So your grade sticks until the very end, and I finish all the grades, and then I go back and do the regrades. So that's how I work through it, and that also doesn't allow you to do multiple regrades in the process. Does that make sense to everybody? I know for 135 it should make sense because you all did regrades last semester, but for those of you that haven't taken my class, does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. So that you have that option to approve your grade as we go along. So course participation, after many of the exercises, and certainly for every assignment, you're going to give feedback to your fellow students. And you're going to do that for 3 of your fellow students. So for example, let's say that there was an assignment due on Wednesday. Okay, there isn't, don't worry. But let's say that there was an assignment due on Wednesday. After everybody turned it in on Wednesday, so probably the next class day, the following Monday, you'd sit down and you'd have to write constructive feedback to 3 of your classmates about that particular assignment. And I'll show you how and where to do it and the details of it and whatever. And by constructive feedback, I mean not, wow, it looks really pretty, or awesome, since that's my word of the day, right? Those are not what I'm interested in. What I'm interested in is you did a great job of texture mapping this object, except for the part of the wood texture on the right leg of your chair, because that one's not done right. So maybe consider going back and revising it. That's constructive feedback. That's helping somebody analyze their work and find mistakes. That's what we're after as part of this. So it's really important that it be constructive. You are required to have 25 characters or more in a comment, and you guys in 135 experienced this before. If you don't meet that character, it eliminates the nice or great or good job. Those are no. Okay? So constructive comments. If you stay up on the comments and you do them as we go, it's not a big deal. If you get behind on the comments, anybody get behind on the comments in 135? Right? More of you should probably raise your hands related to that. If you get behind, it's a little bit challenging to catch up, right? So stay on top of it and keep those, and it's a way of padding your grade. They're going to be worth half of your participation grade for the course, which means that they're worth about 5% of your overall grade. OK, so in terms of materials in this class, you absolutely need to have a flash drive. Your flash drive must be 32 gigs or larger. Larger the better. In this class, your Rhino files can get very large. I wouldn't be surprised if you have a ballooned Rhino file at some point that's over a gig for itself. Okay? That can happen. It's rare, but it does happen. You're also going to have a material library that you're going to collect, and I'm going to give you a bunch of materials that you're going to work with. That by itself is a couple gigs. So you start thinking about this, you need some space, and that's to be expected. 32 gigs seems to be the magic number. That seems to be enough for this class. If you're going to share your flash drive with some other class, probably go up a little bit. Some people like hard drives. That works fine too. We'll talk a little bit about backing up your data. Those of you that were in 135, you know I talked about how important that part is. You still need to follow those kinds of backup principles to make sure your stuff is safe. That being said, OneDrive or Dropbox are great for kind of backing things up. You can certainly not back up your material library because that's reproducible, but back up your work. That's not a bad strategy. I have seen students in the past with both OneDrive and with Google Drive every day go and log in and download their files and whatever. And the truth is that that can get really cumbersome toward the end of the semester. So in that final project where we're creating a building and we're doing all these complex renderings of it, you may have 50 different materials. You have to download all 50 materials, make sure that they're in the same folder, in the same order, in the same name scheme, in the same place on the computer every time you download them. If they're on your flash drive, you don't have to worry about it, other than your drive letter has to stay the same. We'll talk about that. But if you have to download them every time, it's very cumbersome and it can take a lot of time. So I don't recommend not having some physical media that you can plug into the computer. That's just me. Make sure you safeguard your flash drive. If you come to me halfway through the semester and say, my flash drive ran through the wash and it doesn't read anymore, I'm going to say you should have taken better care of it. Right? I'm not trying to be mean, but it's not my job to babysit your flash drive for you. So make sure you take care of it. Don't leave it in the computer and leave the computer lab and hope it's still here when you come back. Right? Chances are, there's a lot of times where I find them and I put them up on the tray or I put them down here in front of the computer and you can get them back. I mean, the good news is they don't really have much value, so I don't see why anybody would take them, but they disappear. So maybe attach it to your keys. You can't go anywhere without your keys, so you won't leave your flash drive behind. I don't know. But make sure that you take responsibility for your flash drive. Because it's not my job to make sure your flash drive is OK. We will need some physical modeling supplies. I told you we were going to laser cut some things and whatever. Those are available generally at the bookstore to purchase. Not a big deal, not that expensive. You know, maybe over the course of the semester you'll spend 20 bucks, maybe less. Not that big a deal. OK? So I just like to kind of warn you ahead of time. If you've already done some modeling in another class, you guys are, most of you are in 220, so you probably have. You'll spend way more on 220 than you will on my class. You already have glue and that kind of stuff. You can use the same glue and whatever. Anyway, I'll let you know much in advance of what you need when you need it, when it gets to that point. So attendance. Attendance in this course is mandatory. If you're not here, you can't ask me questions or you can't say, wait a minute, I didn't, what did you click? What did you do? Because in a class like this where you're trying to learn Rhino, there's a lot of specific things that happen. And as much as the lecture recordings try to capture what I do, or they try to capture keystrokes, they're not perfect and they might miss something. So you can always ask me what it is that I'm doing. Okay? So class starts at 11:10. This particular class starts. I know I have a class in here before you and they're leaving and you're coming in, so it's a little hard in that initial transition. But by 11:10 you should be there. That first 10 minutes from 11 to 11:10 is the perfect time to write your comments every day. And I know in the beginning there won't be any comments, but we'll get into the habit in the semester where you'll be writing them. In which case that time is perfect. I tend to start right at 11:10. I'll notice anybody who's late right? If you walk in after I've started talking, that's being late. You'll be marked late for that particular day. You also shouldn't leave class early. If you finish work early, guess what? Most of you are in 220, and I can tell you right now, you have something to do. Maybe today is the one day you don't have something to do for 220 because you haven't had 220 yet, right? But after tomorrow, you will have something to do, okay? And the good news is you have something to do, but you're also here, and I'm here, and so if you get stuck and you're trying to do something, you can ask me. That's a good thing, okay? So just in case, being here. So you can't leave early. So be here on time. Don't leave early. Sounds pretty good. I take roll randomly, right, during the class period. Same thing happened in 135. That system works pretty well. So essentially what happens is at some point between when I start talking at 11:10 and the end of the class at 1:50, I go through and I take roll. You guys will all have assigned seats, and I'll keep track of who is here and that sort of thing. You get marked late if you're late. You get marked absent if you're absent. Okay? In rare occasions I miss you. Sometimes you guys are taking a lunch and you come back in. It's rare. I think each semester maybe I miss one person one time. It's not that big a deal. Most of the time I can keep track of you. I know most of you already, so it's pretty easy. Okay? But that keeps you honest because you never know when I'm going to take the roll. So you can't leave early. That's my way of double checking that. Your attendance counts for 5% of your overall grade. So you do your comments, that's 5%. Your attendance and being here is the other 5%. That really is a good way of padding your grade. Right? It's like free 10%. You just have to show up. Additional course guidelines. If you're going to miss class, please text me. Actually, I forgot to tell the 135s this morning. If you're going to miss class, please text me ahead of time and say I'm not going to be there. That means I don't like, especially in this class, if I start demoing something and you walk in 10 minutes after I've started, you miss the first 10 minutes, the lead up to whatever we're doing, so you won't be able to do a thing while I'm doing it. Okay? You really won't be able to do anything until you go back and watch the first 10 minutes of the recorded lecture. So it's unfair to yourself and it's unfair to everybody else for you to walk in late and to not know what it is that I'm talking about. So it's important that you're here so that you can actually do this. Okay? If you're not going to be here at all, I understand. Stuff happens. You know, you can bring me the doctor's note. All that kind of stuff happens. You're going to get sick. You're going to get the flu. All that, you know, I hope not. I hope I don't. But it happens. Okay? And so I recognize that you might be gone. If you're gone more than 2 weeks, chances are you're going to be really behind and not do very well in the semester. So no surprise. But I put in here, you may be withdrawn or you may receive an F. Okay? It's your responsibility. Here comes the doom and gloom speech. I'm sorry, I got to do it every semester. This is a college class. You guys are all college students. You're responsible for yourself. Don't expect somebody to hold your hand. It shouldn't work that way. Okay? I think, generally speaking, it's my opinion, we do too much of that at DVC anyway. Okay? So just take responsibility for yourself. If you're going to be gone or if you've missed too much of class, take yourself out of the class. No reason. You can withdraw. You can take it again. No problem. Okay? When it gets close to that withdraw date, it's usually at the end of April in the spring semester, I think, if you're doing not so hot, I'll probably send you an email reminding you, hey, you might want to withdraw. But again, I won't take you out. So it's really important that you take yourself out if you want to. Let's see, what else? Assignment due dates are announced in class. Assignments are due before I start talking on the day they're due. So if we had an assignment that was due on Wednesday, which we don't worry. If we had an assignment that was due on Wednesday, you would need to turn it in. You would need to post it before I start talking, which is generally at 11:10. So it's really important that you do it like that. Otherwise, it's subject to the late work penalty. The reason that I do this is because I don't want you barely squeaking into class and then not paying attention to the first 20 minutes of me talking while you're trying to post your assignment. I want you paying attention to me. I want you thinking about what we're doing as part of this assignment. Anyway, they're announced in class. Exercises are due on the day. In rare cases, you might need a little extra time, in which case you could take the extra time. It's not that big of a deal. But the reason that I try to say they're due on the day that they're assigned is because when you do it on the day that they're assigned, you understand that it's pass, not pass, and however far I got is good enough. Okay, you're here, you worked on it, you get credit for it. That's important. All right, additional course guidelines. What else do we have? Okay, so there's 30 potentially 32 of you and there's one of me, it takes me time to sit and talk to each of you. So if you're in class and you're working and you get stuck and something's not working for you, instead of just like hanging out with your hand up, waiting for me, falling asleep, right? Ask the people next to you, because chances are they might know the answer. They might not, but if they do, you get unstuck and you get to keep going, which is far better than waiting around for me to come and get to you. I try my best, right? I walk around and I try to get to everybody. You guys that were in 135 know that I try to get to you all, okay? But it takes time, and so I can't always get to you. So ask your friends, look at the written tutorials, pull up the video, look at what I said on the video, look at last semester's video, find a way to get yourself unstuck, and if you can't, I'll be there eventually, okay? Let's see, what else? Everything's under the Creative Commons license, blah, blah, blah. You get that. Late work policy, same thing as 135. If you're late, you get graded down by 10% each class that's late. So once again, using that assignment that was due on Wednesday example, if you didn't turn it in by 11:10 on Wednesday, you'd be graded down 1 letter grade. So if you got a B on the assignment, it would suddenly turn into a C. Okay? The other thing that's important about this late work policy is even if you do a regrade at the end of the semester, the late work policy still applies. So let's say it was late and you got a C on it, so it became a D. You could go back and resubmit it, but the maximum that you could get is still, let's say you did an A, it would still only be a B, because that minus 10% still applies. So it's just important to recognize that late work goes on top of everything else. After 4 class days, if you just blew it and you didn't do anything and whatever, and it was 4 days late, I'll still give you half credit for it if you do it. So that's me being nice, just in case. It's better than a 0. If you don't turn it in at all, it's a 0. So no surprise. All right. So I think these are a bunch of examples. I'm going to get to student work in just a second. Just kind of flip through and show you what we're going to be doing over the course of the semester. I'm going to go through these examples, then we'll take a little break, and then we'll come back and keep going. We're going to actually do some real Rhino work today. So you'll get Rhino open, and we'll talk through it. Okay? So I'll just flip through and show you a bunch of renderings from the end of the semester. There's, of course, plenty on the course website that you'll see along the way. So I'll go through these rather quickly. Some of these are splash images on the website. Some of these are they look better on the actual screen. OK, so I just wanted to flip through a bunch so you can see kind of where we're going. A couple other things that I think are important, and that is that part of what makes this class enjoyable for me to teach semester after semester, I mean, obviously I do this over and over and over again, is that you guys bring something different every time. And so this is fun because I know a lot of you. I know probably half of you from one of my other classes. You bring ideas, you bring creativity that I haven't seen yet. You ask me questions that I don't know the answer to. And that's part of what makes it exciting for me. So I look forward to this semester. I think it's going to be a good one. Based on you guys, I think we're going to be in good shape. So we're going to take maybe, let's call it a 15-minute break. We'll come back at 12:15 and get going on actual Rhino. You will register for the course website today. If you already have an account, you don't need to re-register. No big deal. You'll use the same account that you used in 135. We will do a Rhino thing, and you will post that Rhino object in the course website by the end of class today. Okay, so I'll walk you through all of that when you come back. So we'll take about a 15-minute break, and then we'll get started up again. And that's including the lunchtime today. The truth is, you'll probably be out a little early. So I could make the break a little longer, but I think you'd probably rather be out a little early. So
I'm pretty much back to back. 10 minutes.